have Elisabet with us today. Elisabet is working for the Joint Research Center of the European Commission in Ispra in Italy, and there she is deputy head of the Human System Toxicology. And we invited Elisabet today because she is pushing, so to say, the implementation of new approach methods into regulatory science. And there she is also busy with the Commission roadmap towards phasing out animal testing and chemical safety assessment, and also leading the project, the EPA Designathon, where we are discussing how to include new approach methods. And I think we will hear a lot about new approach methods this morning and what are new approach methods. So we are very happy to have you here, Elisabet, and the floor is yours.
It's working, yes. Thank you very much, Silvia. And I am very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And when I first was starting to think about what I was going to say, I was very sort of, I cannot talk about T&M, but now I have understood that I am here on the T day, so that is very good. So I bring in the T then. Let's see if I manage this one. So I will talk about future regulation, embracing the ZeroPM, and let's see where we go with that. No, I do want you. Okay, so I am from the Joint Research Center, and that is a part of the European Commission. And we provide independent evidence and knowledge to support policy decisions. So we are sort of in between research and policy. Say more. Okay. No, I got it. And I am in a unit that is called the Systems Toxicology Unit, and we are hosting the European Reference Laboratory for Alternative Methods to Animal Testing, the ECVAN. And that ECVAN is actually mandated under the Directive 2010/63 that is on the protection of animals used for scientific purposes. And that it is written that we should do research and evaluation, validation and dissemination of replacement methods, and promotion of the 3 R's in general. So, yes, so when I was there thinking about what I was going to say today, I said that, I wrote an email to Hans-Peter and I said that I don't really know what to say, and how should I sort of angle this presentation, and then he sent me this policy brief. And then I read it and I got super inspired. I liked it a lot. It's a lot of things in this brief that is worthwhile to think about, and it's a lot of things that we have thought about as well at the GRC when we have discussed similar issues. So, of course, the bubbles is things that I was thinking about when I saw this schedule, and it's actually sort of comprising everything that in some way is worthwhile to think about when we are thinking about changing in some way the chemicals legislation and how to do regulatory safety assessment of chemicals. Andrew Walsh, that is my colleague, and I, we started to discuss this for quite a while, and then finally we managed to write it down, and we published this paper like a year ago, and we call it like Chemicals 2.0, and we were thinking that in some way we should think it differently. So what we are doing is that we want to have the same protection. We have a history of chemicals safety assessment today. We are not starting from scratch. As we heard yesterday, Michael said that we started in '67 with CLP regulation. And we have a lot of knowledge. Sometimes we don't really know this database of knowledge, how good it is in a way, it's quite various, but still we believe that we have quite a good protection. So why don't we start from that side instead? So we look perhaps not to predict everything, but we keep the same protection level, because that is also non-controversial. Because someone feel like you are protecting more, that is not good, and someone protecting less, that is not good, and so on. So we keep the level. We start from what we have, status quo. But what happens? We have many chemicals that actually the majority of the chemicals on the market that we don't know anything about. And we heard a lot about that yesterday, because that is actually the problem we had yesterday, wasn't it? So we believe that we can bin the chemicals in 3 categories, 3 classes. So the ones with high concern, that are the ones that are banned or severely restricted usually, and that is of course the ones that are red also here in your triangle, so that are the ones that we would like to remove. And then we have hazardous chemicals that we can believe that we can sort of risk manage in some way, and that we have to understand how we do that. And then we have the ones that we assume that we can use for innovation, replacement chemicals, and so on. But today, honestly, we know very little about those. Because, of course, one low volume chemicals on the market, we don't know anything about if they are not in an authorization procedure under some legislation. So what we were thinking that as we want to use none, we make this very simple. We also understood that, of course, usually when you talk about new generation risk assessment, you want to put in exposure as well. But then, of course, you limit it. So we really try to think about how do you do it with the intrinsic properties? What do we need to think about? So we were thinking that we do this little matrix on the one. The y-axis, we have the toxicogenics and the ADME properties, what would remain in the body and the environment and so on, or be metabolized or whatever happens. And on the other, we have the toxicodynamics. And of course, I mean, if you look at the PM discussion, you would have the PM and the VTDMs on the y-axis. And then you need to look at the C that is coming on the x-axis. This was, like Silvia just said, the basis for what then happened in the EPAA non-designathon. So, I mean, we had this idea, but we were very happy to get the collaboration with the EPAA, and then we launched this designathon with a challenge that we gave them 150 chemicals that they should sort of categorize in 3 classes, in the 3 classes red, orange, and green. And we launched it in the summer, and the deadline was at the new year last year, and we got 23 solutions, and we were very happy for that. And yes, Silvia did contribute with the solution, and we all had workshop together in ISPRA in the spring. And this was not like no one is winning, because we thought this is too complex. Instead, we want everyone to make the exercise to get the mindset right, and then we meet to discuss. And now we are going to, as we assume, co-create something. So we are going into the next phase, and we have now created 3 working groups. And that is on, of course, the chemical space, that we need to understand better how we cover the chemical space, if it's well covered, we could do it differently, if we cover different uses and so on. And the biological space, which models do we use to test, so we can cover the biology we need to cover, and then the classification discussion itself, how do we do it. And of course, we want to do what you wanted yesterday. We want to try to find the ones that we don't know anything about, that are up there in the green area, and we can see if they should be either severely restricted or they can be in some way managed. And but we believe also that besides identifying unknown chemicals, if you would like to do such an assessment of all chemicals, because we believe that this assessment will be sort of more basic, faster, and so on. We also would identify more low concern chemicals that we can use for replacement. So we say low concern because we don't say that they are not toxic. We are not going to test them for everything. But we have sort of some feeling that this is better than nothing. And it is better, yeah, exactly. We do know something more than we should have known for the ones of these chemicals today. And yeah, the scale is here, what we sort of have believed that you come to, how many substances you would have classified by or assessed by 2045 if you go on as we are going on now. And the other scale is then if we introduce a new classification system that is much lighter, and then we could cover more chemicals. And you could also discuss how it could be done. So of course, if you are looking at nuns, you are sort of moving away from the adverse outcome. So you don't look at the disease any longer, but you look sort of on intermediate effects that you can show with new approach methods. Of course, we already have the EDs that we have introduced in the CFP and in the EU, and that is an example, of course, of an intermediate effect. So if you would accept that you can sort of show that you have an ED and you don't need to show that you have an adverse effect afterwards, that is perhaps already good enough. And perhaps that is better because in a way, I mean, we are not so sure about the final classifications we have today. And there is a lot of overlap, so that is the other problem. So if you sort of look at systemic toxicity, of course it comes into your body, something is happening. And you have these intermediate effects that might lead to several of the adverse outcomes. So to move sort of upstream would perhaps reduce the overlap and of course reduce the time for your assessment. For example, of course, the mutagenicity, I mean, more than 90% of the mutagenic substances classified, hormones classified today are cancerogenic, and we know it. So why don't we just accept that we classify them as such straight away, rather than going to the adverse outcome? And now bear with me a little bit more, because thinking about this, of course you think about the classification system. And if you look today, the gray boxes up there, they are the ones with the animal testing. That is, the criteria today is based on animal testing if you look at systemic tox classes. And then we try to introduce non-animal methods. And they might be the ones that are perhaps just enhancing what we have seen in an animal study. And there might be also some new properties like the development, neurotoxicity that is developed now that we are not covering well in animal testing. So we enlarge sort of the knowledge we need to classify, which might be good in a way, but on the other hand, we get it more and more complex. So if we would do our little thing here with our classification and just do it all together, systemic tox classification, covering all the other classes and not looking at the adverse outcome, something different would happen. This would sort of be something we do meanwhile everything else is happening it's a parallel action, nothing is contradicted. And you can see that you add the non-animal methods, the yellow blocks, to the current classification system and try to introduce them to fulfill the criteria and for the different classes. And meanwhile, you sort of develop this one, and you will have some of the nuns in that new class that you have in the upper class, but all of them will not have an added value for the classification. And then you don't need them as an idea if you just have the protection. So what is happening with time is, as Lisa and I see it, is that it will be very difficult. I mean, we cannot predict the adverse outcome with non-animal methods and we were never really sure the human relevance before, and so on. It's getting more and more complex. So, I mean, you see these long yellow lines here now is all the data we start to collect here to get in, to be able to predict the adverse outcome. So then we believe that the new class would be sort of more comprehensive, it will cover more, it will be easier, and so on. And it would sort of keep the levels of the classification today. So you would sort of translate the categories as they are today. And that is something that, of course, can be discussed much more and investigated. And the designathon is, the APA designathon is the first trial to do this. Yesterday, of course, when I was thinking about the PM and PMTs and PVMs, it would be a very nice second stage to look at that. If this designathon, with only systemic toxicity, would start to work out, that could actually be a next step. You add something on, and you could look at it further. Anyway, next thought is that, of course, the information requirements are not in the CLP legislation, as Mike said yesterday, and so that is coming from all the other pieces of legislation in the Chemicals Act, which is in the EU. So, of course, we have this movement towards one substance, one assessment. So we believe that we have some sort of common information requirements, and we hope that they could be more and more pushed them, so it will be more rational, and then you will have specific information requirement because of the use of the chemical. And to get more numbers in, I mean, it will be very important to have some sort of testing strategies, because there are already testing strategies, but they could for sure be better evolved, and you come to the animal test later on. And some of the pieces of legislation have a post-market surveillance, but not all of them, and perhaps that is another net to put in then, to be sure. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that we have put in these basic information requirements into the idea of the common information requirements. And then we would say that that is something that could be common in all the legislations, so you could inform yourself to do this sort of first sorting in the three colors. And hopefully you could also do it then for more chemicals, and how that could be done, that is also a discussion in itself. But it could also actually be some sort of voluntary procedure, some sort of guidance. And you could even think about doing it stepwise. So you have first only computational methods, and then if it's 3% flags, you get flags, you could have certain experimental testing and so on. And this is, no, it's not my last slide, sorry. But this is a step further. I mean, because then when we have presented this with the hazard classification and the three classes, what is happening is everyone is saying then when you look at the other pieces of chemical legislation, but please get an assessment. So you still have to do the risk assessment, so then you need all the information again. And then we have started to think about this, but if we do that as well, sort of a reverse engineering, actually, I mean, we could read across the risk management measures instead of the chemical structures. Think about it. So you say that chemicals that end up to be managed in a certain way are probably having some properties in common. So if we start to look at that instead and try to read across that, then we would end up with bigger groups than the groups we were talking about yesterday. And if you then sort of try to do the same thing as we did for our matrix and in the EPA designathon, but you need to have something more. You have to possibly have some information about use-related properties. You also need some sort of quantitative measure, of course. but perhaps you can base that on some sort of cut-off limits in the different properties you are measuring. We are now thinking about, like, actually you go away from an in vitro in vivo extrapolation. That is actually quite complex. It's good to do it, but perhaps if you get convinced enough, you can do it in another way, and it would be easier and faster. But of course, we have to try it out. So I mean, it's an experiment, a thought experiment so far. But it's good if someone more is starting to think about it, and they are very happy to discuss with more intellectual capacity with the rest of it. So then we have the problem that I think we also mentioned several times yesterday, and that is the change. We don't like change, just admit it. I mean, everyone knows what they have and they don't like the change. And it has recently actually been, there is a couple of publications that I noted recently about NAMs and the update of NAMs and the social sort of reluctance to change. So, I mean, you have loads of reasons why you don't want to change. But perhaps, why not? I mean, I am sort of getting old enough to believe that I don't believe in magic any longer. I think we need to give it a push. So, yeah, it's good reading and it's good to think about. And in relation to this, I think Silvia mentioned that I am collaborating in the inter-service group on the roadmap towards phasing out animal testing that was requested through a European citizen initiative from the non-animal NGOs, and they got more than 1 million signatures in 1 year, and then the Commissioner has to reply and take some actions. So one of the actions was to create a roadmap to phase out the animal testing in regulatory safety assessment. And we are working on that, and we have also there understood that, of course, the change is very, among all actors, like in this room, is very, very important. And we have this change management working group to try to facilitate the structure of the roadmap and the idea of changing, because we have a lot of different people that need to work together. The image here of the roadmap is sort of like different work streams or different colors. So we have scientific development, but that is not the only thing we need. We need also regulatory implementation of it, we need change management, and also policy decisions. And if we manage to get this to coordinate it, not to overlap it, to understand how it is coordinated, we will go towards something sustainable, because we need the confidence to get where we are going. And we are also thinking about this, that we need indicators to understand where we are going. So we have these checkpoints. And with this, I want to thank you, and it was probably a lot of information in a short time. Okay, thank you very much.
ZeroPM, Zero Pollution of Persistent and Mobile Substances. This project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme under Grant Agreement number 101036756.